Perla Gonzalez. Thank you for joining me on this presentation about miscommunication in the workplace. At first, I'm going to describe to you the situation at hand. So I was working with a company called TriFit Sports, and my title at this company was coach. So basically what I did is I traveled to various cities within Orange County or the Inland Empire, and I taught children between the ages of 3 to 15 various sports, such as soccer, basketball, t-ball, whatever was specifically being asked. The main office for this company was located in the city of Placencia. However, as our company was expanding, more clients were looking to get these classes and these educational training programs. Our company grew, and we needed to switch locations. So our new office was being transferred to the city of Irvine. This office change created a lot of chaos within the workplace. So specifically, our workplace was affected in communication, organization, and employee interaction. For workplace communication, shift trades became a major issue as well as equipment misplacement. Organization became an issue with paperwork and the lack of access to technology. And employee interaction was affected because tension between coworkers started to arise. My four main diagnoses for this situation was tension between coworkers, lack of technology, miscommunication, and assumptions. The combination of these four diagnoses created the chaotic workplace that came about. Value A, Williams, and Parak conducted a research about workplace miscommunication, and they determined that effective attitudinal organization commitment and teamwork behavioral commitment were significantly positively related to organizational effectiveness assessment, meaning that the workers within a company, their attitude and their teamwork are directly related to the outcome and the effectiveness of the company. So for miscommunication, the reason miscommunication came about was the lack of information regarding shift trading, and there was minimal notice between coaches and supervisors. The lack of technology arose because we were unable to access information regarding classes such as location change or a time change because computers would be transferred from one office to the next. Assumptions occurred within the workplace because of this office change. People would assume that equipment or things necessary to teach a class were at one office, but in reality they were at the other office. And then tension between coworkers was created because all of the stress of wasted time and wasted efforts and the atmosphere of the workplace, such as work meetings, became cold, in other words described. Brandy, Brown, and Liang also conducted a research in 2017, and they wrote, free recall of workplace gossip may have elicited more memories of negative workplace gossip simply because those memories were more stronger and more accessible than the memories of positive workplace gossip, meaning that negative workplace gossip held stronger on a person's mind than the positive impacts that occurred within the workplace. So for my prescription, the first issue I'm going to tackle is the organizational issue. Rhea Hall explains that one of the simplest yet overlooked aspects of leadership is having clearly defined directives for those that are being managed, meaning that direction needs to be direct. So there was often miscommunication, and in order to clear that up, all information should have been direct and instantly handed over to whoever needed that information. Direction is needed for a functional workplace. If you have any questions, then those questions should be directly answered and they should be asked. Therefore, if there is ever an issue of anything coming up, that it could be addressed properly and things will be handled and things will continue moving smoothly. The other issue I'm going to tackle is technology issues. So upon doing some of my research, I found something called cloud technology, which is if you have Apple laptop or iPads or iPhones, they kind of incorporate that type of cloud technology where you're able to log into one device and any information that you gather on one device transfers over to another device. So I think having something like that ahead of time, or having things written down or paper printed out ahead of time before transferring over the computers to different locations, would have saved a lot of the workers and supervisors a lot of stress and a lot of tension. So specifically, cloud technology is documents and communication can be accessed anywhere, removing the headache of locally saved documents being unavailable in a pinch. So specifically, we are assigned classes in the very beginning. They can be 8-week courses, and that for those 8 weeks, every Tuesday at 5 o'clock, we know exactly where we need to be. However, some parks or some community centers have other things that get randomly scheduled, so we weren't able to access those changes because our computers weren't up. The miscommunication issue in the workplace consisted mostly of shift trading and equipment misplacement. So shift trading, we were pretty nonchalant about employee shift trading. It really just consisted of a coworker texting another coworker asking them to cover a shift. However, sometimes people would assume that that shift was being covered, or they would assume that they knew where the location was. In reality, they didn't. So there would either be no shows from our part or shows in places that they weren't supposed to be. So I think a good way to tackle this would have been to create a policy and standards that each employee is required to be held accountable to. For example, like a shift trading network. I know at one of my previous jobs, we had an employee profile, and within that profile there was a tab specifically designated for shift trading. So I think implementing some type of network like that would have really helped us, and will continue to. As all change must begin with oneself, the participants verbalize their commitment to changing attitude, behavior, and in the second session, verbalize their success in keeping these commitments. This was said by English in 2002. So by this quote, I think it's also important that employees, if there's ever anything that's bothering them or something that upsets them, instead of doing a negative thing such as talking to other coworkers or gossiping, then the issue should be tackled up front with the specific employee or supervisor that the issue is with, in order to avoid any further tension or unnecessary chaos. So for my application, I think the most important and needed prescription was for miscommunication, because miscommunication is needed in all levels of work and all fields of work. Specifically, I listed that listening to the voice of the employees who are carrying out the functions of the company for advice and opinions, meaning that us coaches were the ones that traveled to the locations to carry out these classes. So while I was considering it as like a pyramid, and the coaches being at the bottom and the supervisors and those being closer to the tip. So I think in these workplace meetings, there was kind of what I've listed as upward versus downward information flow. So in these meetings, it was more of the supervisors or the higher ups directing to the coaches what needed to be done and how we were to carry ourselves, which is all needed during the workplace meeting, but there was never really time for downward versus upward information flow, meaning listening to the opinions of the coaches of what we needed and how being out on the field, what things needed to be addressed, and the communication between that was never really addressed in any workplace meetings. So definitely for communication, I think one of the most important things was the downward to upward information flow. Coe and Latham share that truly giving values a voice within an organization takes a concentrated effort. Companies can start by bringing the following tips into the office, meaning that every individual within the company deserves to have their voice heard, because at some point they're making a very valid argument about something that needs to be addressed. So all voices should be considered, especially in my situation, the voices of the coaches to the supervisors. Poor, Burgoon, and Parrott explain 6 dimensions for restoring communication. I think this is the most vital information through all my research that could definitely benefit the company in this situation. The 6 dimensions for restoring communication are interaction control, expressions of negative arousal, intimacy escalation, blocking and avoidance, distancing, and confrontation. Specifically for expression of negative arousal, that consists of raising voices, outbursts of anger. So that occurs when there was miscommunication or assumptions within our workplace. So if a coach was directed to one office to pick up equipment, but in reality the equipment was in another office, coaches would get very upset, raising their voice, explaining that their gas was just wasted and their time was just wasted and they missed the class. Distancing means ending the relationship. So whoever upset you, you tend to stay away from them and avoid them, creating that more cold atmosphere and that deeper tension within the room. Lastly, I think what needs to be mostly addressed is the confrontation, directly stating what the individual did and did not like. It seems that in this situation, all the other 6 dimensions of restoring communication were touched upon, but never confrontation. So people tended to stay away from the situation, just escalating and building it more up instead of tackling it hand on and taking care of it right there with whoever it may be. Thank you. I hope you